Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. So, moving on from China, getting into some Mongolia action. A few things to close up from China. I think I mentioned my last dinner with Terry, but I also got my last dinner with Sean. He was the one who introduced me to that cui ro, which is cut with bone, like a small strip of bone, so it's a little bit crunchy after the bone is boiled. It must be cartilage, though, because if it was just a shaving of bone, it would be so difficult to eat, even after it was boiled or cooked. Boy, if anybody knows what cui ro is, tell me. I really thought everybody said bone, but I don't know how much sense that makes. Anyway, it was delicious. So I took Sean to a place with really good cui ro, gangwa cui ro, so dry stir-fried, with a bunch of spices. And the first time I had it was perfect. It's like one of the best dishes I've ever had. But then when I took Sean, of course, they screwed up the order, and I was like, no. It was still 8 out of 10, but after you've had 10 out of 10, and I want to show my friend the 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10 was somewhat lackluster. But you know what? As Gloria Gaynor said, I will survive. It was still a really fun dinner, and Sean has a baby and a family, so he has not really gone wild and got rail drunk in a very long time. According to him, 4 years, but I remember getting drunk with him, I believe, a couple years ago, or well, whatever. Anyway, this time we did get very, very drunk, and I think I scared him because I was dodging mopeds running to the restaurant, and he's so used to watching his kid that when he's around anybody else, Sean is still in dad mode, and he's always very protective. So I notice him being a little more worried about people going into the road, and yeah, he's a good dad. He protects his kid, and now he has dad brain. That's just what happens when you have a kid, as far as I understand. And we had to run across the street a couple times and get some more beer, and he was very excited. And we went to the craft beer place and ate some yak jerky and had a couple brews there as well. We just had a big old hog wild beer night with the boys, and it was a lot of fun. And then after that, that's when I took that crazy creep for 10 more hours, just drinking more beer all night like a crazy person. And then I went to the second frog dinner with Terry. Wow, what a crazy goofball I can be. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Terry. Oh, and I should mention I'm an idiot because I made sure to charge my USB-C plug-in adapter and the microphone, Bluetooth mic, so that I could do interviews with both Sean and Terry. But maybe I drank too much beer or whatever. Every time I thought about interviewing them, I was like, oh yeah, I got to bring my mic. And then I just didn't bring it, and I went and hung out with them. It would have been difficult anyway because we were always, with Sean, it was always him and his family, so it would have been difficult to interview him. I could have done it the last dinner maybe, but I don't know how fun that would be. I was only there for a couple weeks, so we were having too much fun hanging out. I don't know if I could have got either of them alone for an interview, but yeah, sorry about that. I definitely planned on having at least Terry, because he doesn't have a kid, so I knew he'd have a little more time. And then I figured I'd be able to get Sean for like 15 minutes and get a small interview. But I'm too dumb, and I don't plan anything. So I'm thinking I might just call them up and have them send me our recorded call. And then we'll just do like a little interview that way, because I want to start doing interviews on this thing. I want to have some other people talking. Do you think that sounds good? Or do you just love listening to this single monotonous tone of my voice? Hey, if you like it, I mean, more people, the numbers are going up, downloads are going up. I'm not getting even 20 downloads a day, I don't think, but it's a lot higher than it used to be, perfectly frank with you. I used to get like a couple a day, and now I got like 100 the other day. But I think that's fluke. I think AI is just downloading these things. But yeah, 10 listeners, and then real people are writing in. So I know I'm connecting with a couple people, and I'm really glad to hear from you when I do. it's a lot of fun doing this too. I'm sure I'm going to have fun looking back on these or sharing these stories with people, no matter what comes of it. I thought about writing a book, but it's just not, that doesn't sound as much fun. And I don't want to do a video channel because that sounds like way more work. But telling stories is what I do. I just told you how I hung out with someone I didn't even like talking for 10 hours and drinking beer with them. Apparently, I just like blabbing. Okay, so then I went to the biggest airport in the world because I had to get to Mongolia. It's the first time I left from Beijing Daxing Airport, which I knew about, but I never had a flight leaving from there. And to Mongolia, a bunch of flights go from Daxing and back to Daxing. So for a long time, Beijing International was the main airport, Peking Airport, and that's in the far, far northeast of the city. I have been to that airport more times than I can count, probably 100 times. No lie, probably close to 100. I would, yeah, probably close to 100 times because I did a lot of visa runs from that airport back in the day. And then I also went through Beijing. Every time I visited countries through Asia, I would fly through Beijing. So maybe 100 times, which is wild to think about. But Daxing, a new airport, 2018, 2019, something, fairly new. And it's the biggest airport in the world, apparently. And it didn't feel like the biggest airport in the world. But I don't know. That's what the online sources say, so who am I to disbelieve them? Except clearly I don't trust them. It's a very nice airport, and it was shockingly empty. Maybe that's because it was so big. No, it was very well organized. It was very clean, and it was very sparsely populated. There wasn't a ton of people inside. There was still plenty of people. It's a major airport, but it just wasn't really crowded most of the time. So I just went upstairs, put down my pack, laid down, and took a nap until my plane was ready for check-in. Oh, I did. Okay, I met a girl who cosplays different anime characters the last night before China, and I can't even remember. She worked at a shop, and we started talking, and then she was like, yeah, I cosplay things, because I know she had cool gloves or something. I can't remember. And then she showed me some objects, and that's her thing. She likes to cosplay, and she looked cool. She looked pretty good at it. She had a Street Fighter thing and other stuff. Anyway, back at the airport, because I'm on my way to Mongolia. And when I go to a place, I like to learn the language of wherever I'm going, whichever country I go to. And my usual way to do that is to find the best app for learning that language and then study the language. So recently, Duolingo for me has been back on track, so I've started using Duolingo again. They ruined their app completely with AI for, I didn't use them for over half a decade, I think, over 5 years. But I liked the Japanese course recently, so I started using that. And I use other ones too. Like when I went to Australia, I had to learn Dirt Snake from the Dirt Snake app. I'm just kidding. There's no Dirt Snake app, but that would be funny if there was a Australian accent app. I bet there's got to be, right? There probably is an accent app. But Duolingo does not have Mongolian. And I was like, oh, weird. Okay. That has happened in plenty of, they didn't have Thai, I think it was, or no, they have Vietnamese, which maybe it was Thai. They didn't have some very popular East Asian language that I was surprised by, and so I had to find a specific app made by someone from that country. So if I don't have one on the main app, Duolingo, like I usually use, I'll just learn a different thing, and if there's no resources, then I will just use a dictionary, but there's resources for every language these days, except Mongolian. I was shocked. I downloaded every single app. There were about 20 different apps, and the only one that taught Mongolian at all was Ling, and their curriculum is, it's not free. First of all, you have to purchase a bunch of levels, and it did seem good, but I know also that Ling is completely AI made, and I just didn't expect it to be super useful. So I didn't even get a dictionary. None of the dictionaries had audio. There was no audio pronunciation. Even Ling didn't have all of them, and that was clearly AI. It's weird. It's weird. I guess it makes sense. There's only 3 million people in the country, and it's the only country that speaks Mongolian. But I was pretty shocked that none of the dictionaries have audio recordings. So I couldn't even look up a word and pronounce it or like hear it pronounced, because if it's Romanized phonetics, it doesn't make any sense. Like Google Translate does not have any audio pronunciation. So there's a word and it's spelled Bayarlaa. So that sounds like Bayar Lala, but that's wrong. And it's even written like that in Mongolian, but that's not how anybody says it. It's Bayarшлал, which is the L sound, and then you breathe around your tongue while touching the tip of your tongue up on the roof of your mouth. And that's the approximation I can get. I haven't gone to any language schools here. I just learned a couple words. So I could say Bayarшлal or Bayarsta, like thank you, goodbye, very basic stuff. But I was shocked that Google Translate doesn't have audio. None of the Mongolian English dictionaries have audio for me to listen to the audio at all. And the writing in Mongolian and in Romanized English do not correspond to the pronunciation of many, many of the words. Like most of the words, I just stopped using them. I used YouTube to learn like the top 10 words. Neg means one. So I have like a few words, and I started studying the Cyrillic alphabet, the Mongolian Cyrillic alphabet, so that I could read some stuff. But it's very surprising that there are 0 audio resources for Mongolian, aside from like a few YouTube videos. But even those are extremely sparse and very basic fundamental. Everyone here did seem happy when I can say Bayarшлal or Bayarsta or whatever. They do like that I'm trying to speak it, but that's as far as I can go. I can just say hello, Sambanu, and goodbye, and thank you, and then a couple numbers and some odd words here and there. Kushur, this great pastry here that I like. Savory pastry. Delicious. Kimchi and yak meat. Okay, I'm at the biggest airport in the world, and I discover that I cannot study Mongolian. So that really irritates me, and after going through every single app available for learning Mongolian and not finding a single one that provides audio pronunciations, I shrug my shoulders and say, hey man, that's life, because you know what? It is, and sometimes you just don't have the resources you need. And if this was 30 years ago, I wouldn't even have apps. There would be I'd have a pocket dictionary that was completely with all these spelling errors that don't coordinate to the spoken language. YouTube wouldn't be a thing. I wouldn't have anything. So, at least I had a couple basic words, and I've studied plenty of languages before. I'll get to study languages again. I'm going to study Korea when I go to Korea, and I'm going to study Japanese again for the 5th time when I go to Japan. I'm plenty fortunate. I shouldn't be complaining, but I really wanted to study Mongolian because it's cool, and this is a cool country, and these are cool, stylish people. Mongolians are very stylish, and they have tons of restaurants from Korea here, so I'm wondering if they're like influenced by Korea, but they don't wear a ton of makeup. It looks like the girls are starting to wear some sort of makeup tutorial makeups, but it's not very popular here, and their dress here is like motorcycle club chic. It's like very tough and cool and not super delicate, and delicate is a good way, like the South Korean generally is. Oh, wait, there's one other thing from China, it looks like, is this in the wrong? No, it's mostly in order. There's just one Beijing thing that was not in order for some weird reason. Oh, you know what? There's 2 things, because right before I left, I talked to someone in a park. I just hung out, and then she said I made her feel open-minded. And I was like, yeah, cool, dude. High five. Travelers help people feel open-minded a lot. I hear that a lot, so that's always nice to hear. Did I say that last week? I can't remember. Okay, wait, there is this last thing. So before I left Bangkok, I was talking to this girl in the hostel, and at first she was very excited to hear about traveling, and then she just said, yeah, but you're so lucky because the US dollar is worth so much. And I was like, well, you're a corporate lawyer, so you probably make a lot more money than I do. And she said, yeah, but you have USD, so it's worth more. I was like, well, not really. If you have the equivalent that I have, like more equivalent money than I do, then you have more, even if you only have renminbi. And she was like, yeah, but renminbi is worthless. I was like, no, 6 of them are 1 USD. So if you have 1,000 renminbi and I only have $50 US, you'll have much more because 50 US is only 300 renminbi. And she was like, yeah, but with 50 US, you can buy 5,000 renminbi. And I realized that she didn't understand foreign currency, like the exchange rate. She didn't get that. She was just like, you have magic currency because it's from the US, which I do hear occasionally. There are people, especially from China, that have that mindset. It's not super common, but it does happen. But I was kind of surprised because she seemed very highly educated. She spoke fluent English. She was a native. So she was like fluently bilingual and seemed very smart and also worked with international clients. So you would think she'd understand okay, so I thought that was weird enough. And then she got a little irritated about that, but I just moved on. And I showed her some receipts. She was like, well, how can you live on $500 a month? And I showed her, I was like, well, I stayed in this hostel. It's $100 per month. And then that's with utilities and Wi-Fi. So I have $400 extra the rest of the month to eat food or rent a bike and go somewhere or buy swimming gear or whatever. Just do whatever I want. And she's like, because it's USD. And I was like, no, not because USD, because it's 400 USD equivalent in Thailand or whatever. And things are cheap. Things are cheaper in low-cost countries. Like China's food is much cheaper than US food. But you can go to Thailand and some of their products will be even cheaper than some of the products in China. And she was like, well, I've only been to Bangkok. I haven't been to Thailand yet. And I was like, oh, Bangkok is the capital of Thailand. So you have been to Thailand. And she gave a very haughty laugh and said, no, I went to Bangkok, the country. I have not been to Thailand. And she was getting pissed at this point. And I was like, I'm sorry. Bangkok is the capital of Thailand. So you've been to Thailand. And she was like, well, who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. And I was like, yeah. I mean, we have phones. We can just check real quick. And then she was like, anyway, I have to go, and left. I have met plenty of people in China, my 6 and whatever years living there and visiting, and even in other countries. If someone's speaking Mandarin, I like to talk to them. And then they're like, oh, you speak Mandarin. And we have a conversation. It's fine. I met plenty of people. The lack of awareness about the wider world around this international business lawyer bowled me over. I was very surprised at the turn this conversation went. I don't know. And I know plenty of Chinese people who have been to Bangkok. I've never met one who thought Bangkok was a separate country than Thailand. That is remarkable. Even just the size of Bangkok, how looking at a map, it says capital. I was amazed that anyone could think that was a separate country. I'm so curious how that happened, especially since she was there. She lived there for like a month for a business trip. And somehow it skipped her awareness that Bangkok was part of Thailand. And lawyer. Anyway, weird. Thanks, lawyer girl. It was an interesting talk. Broadened my mind. Okay, we're almost in Mongolia, folks. So I am on the plane and I'm waiting for someone to sit next to me. And, you just have luck. Sometimes they're cool, sometimes they're not. And this girl walked up and sat down next to me. And she was cute. And I looked over. And then I was like, wait a minute. I know what that is. That's a jalaba. I said that in my head because I don't know this person and I don't want to be a creepy guy on a plane. But she was wearing something I haven't seen in over a decade, probably. Whenever I was in Morocco, that must be 10 years ago. Wait, that's not. Oh, who knows? Close to 10 years ago, we'll say. I'm not good with time. This girl sat down and I saw it, and it could have been some other dress from another Middle Eastern country, but I owned a jalaba for the 3 months I was living in Morocco. So I was pretty comfortable, recognizing the style of dress, and a jalaba looks like, those Jawa in Star Wars? In the beginning of the movie, they buy R2-D2 and they sell him back to the guy. They're wearing those big cloaks with big hoods and big sleeves. That's kind of what a jalaba looks like, except jalabas are usually brighter colors or lines, like gold decorating lines. They look super cool, and they're very comfortable, and they completely block you from the sun. So I got one of those, and I went around Morocco, Marrakesh, and everybody was happy to see a foreigner trying on their dress. And everybody said Alibaba because I had a beard, and apparently Alibaba had a beard. And if you have a beard, then you are Alibaba if you're visiting Marrakesh. And I would always say Alibaba Jalaba. So I know about jalabas. I at least know the name and the look of a jalaba. So I saw the girl, and before we took off, I was like, that's a jalaba, probably. I'll ask her later. But I don't like talking to people on a plane in general, especially once they find out I'm a traveler, because if they're interested, then now I am in my chair and I just have to field every question. And sometimes there are a lot of them, and this has happened. I've been on a 6-hour flight and someone is just talking, and I'm like, I just gotta answer these questions. I'm pretty good at shutting a conversation down if I don't want to, but I'd rather not have to do that. Better never begin. So I didn't talk to her. I figured I'd just ask her later. And we went through the flight, and every time there was the slightest thing of turbulence, she pulled out a Quran. I think she was trying to be surreptitious, which I get. I mean, there are plenty of parts of the world, the U.S., of course, and a lot of Western Europe, that are very uncomfortable with Muslims. And I think she was just trying to not draw attention to herself. But then again, she was wearing a very stylish jalaba, which is a very distinctive gown, cloak robe. And she kept praying. She kept saying one of the prayers to Allah whenever the plane shook a little bit, and she'd just bow her head down and say the prayer and then come back up and bow her head and say the prayer every time it happened. And we were on a plane to Mongolia, so there's high winds and there was clouds and all that, so it was shaking a little bit. But any time it shook at all, man, she probably did that prayer 50 times for that 2-hour ride. And hey, it worked. We got to Ulaanbaatar. So thanks, Jalaba girl, which I know because on our way in, I was like, hey, is that a jalaba? She's like, yeah. I was like, it looks good. It looks really cool. And her accent was North American. She sounded like she was from the U.S., and we exchanged a couple pleasantries. I was kind of perplexed, though. She was almost the only other person on this flight with me to Mongolia. But whatever, I didn't care that much. And then we landed. I was just interested in the jalaba, and then I wanted to ask her about the Quran because it had pinyin, Romanized pronunciation under the prayers and everything. So she must have recently got into Islam because she had to phonetically sound out all of the Arabic letters using Romanized letters. And I was very curious what she was going to do in Mongolia. We talked about Morocco a bit, and I mentioned Chef Shawan. And she liked Fez, the only dangerous city I've ever been to. She loved Fez, apparently. So that was great to hear because that's the first good thing, like from a person who's been there, especially a girl. That is the first time I've heard someone going to that city and complimenting it. So maybe she's gone recently and it's radically changed since I was there 10 years ago. Or maybe she was in mosques, or maybe she has family there, or maybe it's a different circumstance. But that was nice to hear. All right, and now I'm in flippin' Mongolia, and the first thing that happens, I find out that my no-fee travel credit card doesn't work. And I was like, that's weird because it works everywhere in the world. And the ticket lady looked confused too. And I tried to look at it to see like what went wrong, but it's all written in Mongolian Cyrillic. So I'm like, well, I have no idea I'll probably figure that out later. And I did. It turns out that even though it says Visa, and I have a Visa, Golomt Bank is a popular local bank in Mongolia, does not work with my Visa card. Every other bank in Mongolia works with my Visa card except Golomt Bank. And there's TDB and Hasbank and Hanbank, and I've tried all of them and they all work fine, but there's something wrong with Golomt. So I don't know if it's all Visa cards, but if you head there and your card doesn't work in a place, try another place with a different looking card reader. The card readers are different styles based on which bank produces the card reader. So if you're in Mongolia and your card doesn't work, try another store with a card reader that looks different than the one your card was declined on, because apparently some of the banks aren't tied into the international credit system, so they don't work with international cards is what I'm thinking. But that's okay. I transfer like $30 US in cash, and turns out that's a ton of money. I really thought I only had like $10 left of my Japanese yen. That's all I used, actually. I just used the leftover Japanese yen, and I really didn't think I had that much. But I got like 200,000 tugrik, which is the Mongolian currency. And that was 10 times as much as I expected to get. I thought I was going to get 20,000, which I knew was enough to take the airport limousine into the city. And then he gave me 200,000, and I was like, I don't know. Whatever. I took it. Obviously, it's a big stack of cash. And I waited for the bus, and then I got straight on as soon as it showed up, and then we had to just sit there for 45 minutes until it left. It took 45 more minutes to drive into the city, but it was interesting because it's a new country. It was late. It's already midnight. I'm excited to be in a new country, and everyone's speaking Mongolian, which is such an interesting language. It's like halfway Chinese, halfway Russian. There's a lot of aspirants like that. But it's a little guttural. Very cool language. I like languages. All languages are cool, but I do like some languages more, and Mongolian's very interesting to me. I wish I could have studied it. But oh well, I can't. So I get into the city. I get off at Sukbatar Square, which is the main square of the city. And all of a sudden I realize how tiny Ulaanbaatar is. Like, I had heard, people told me that it was a very difficult city to walk around. And I have no idea what they're talking about because it takes maybe 2 hours to walk from the extreme north to the extreme south of the city. And it would probably take 5 hours to walk from the west to the east of the city. Just strolling down the street. If you're driving a car, it would be like 10 minutes northwest and 20 minutes east-west. North, south, east, west, I mean. It's, and it's all completely flat. Oh, no, actually, the north of the city does go up in elevation, but it's largely flat. It's a pretty flat city overall. So it's definitely walkable. It's easy as heck. I got from the middle of Sukbatar Square to the far southeast, walking at a brisk pace because it was chilly, and you never know with Airbnb, the map might be wrong. Maybe you'll have to search around for a while to find it. Doesn't happen a lot, but I was just thinking. So I was walking at a brisk pace, and I think maybe it took me 1 hour to get to that. I'm thinking like 45 minutes. It really was a pretty easy walk to get to the apartment. And I found it right away. It's a nice little spot. I'm digging it. I stopped on the way and got some horse jerky and some yak jerky from a convenience store. Got a couple beers, got like a sandwich or something just to try like the local snack food they have in the convenience stores. And it was good. It was soup. The meat is incredibly high quality. I'll say that. The meat here, always super fresh, probably because it's a cold temperature and the air is really dry. But all the meat is so fresh here, and I really liked it. But it's so fresh and so like real. The meat is so real that it's almost too rich, especially the yak meat. But I love it. I'm definitely into yak meat. I was just surprised at how not full, but how sated I felt after a few bites of this yak jerky. I didn't finish it all. I brought more than half of the pack home with me, which shocked me because I can eat jerky okay, also, this wasn't completely dry jerky. It was slightly moist jerky, and I don't like that as much as really dry jerky. But I was glad. I walked into a store, and the first thing I see is horse jerky, yak jerky, and a row of beer. And I was like, well, I guess I know what I'm doing to celebrate my inaugural visit to Mongolia. And it was good. So I walked down, got into my room, passed the F out, and then the next day I thought, okay, this is the first real day, so you get to have one more beer before you take a little break. And I went down to the supermarket, and there's a great supermarket, and as I've stayed here longer, I found out it's one of the best supermarkets. Not even a 5-minute walk from my building. And there's only 2 of them in the city, or not many of them, and it was very close. So I went inside, and I love looking around supermarkets and seeing all the different foods and the different things that are normal in each country. Each country is like, well, yeah, of course we have dried pitted plums. Everybody loves dried pitted plums, but you're not going to find that in every country that's just like commonly like real fruit. It turns out they have a lot of dehydrated food here. It's a big thing, which I kind of knew that. They do preserve meat and preserve a lot of things in Mongolia traditionally because they're nomads. But there's a lot of dried fruits and dried meats that you can get in this country, which I like because I like dehydrated food a lot. And after I'm walking around looking at stuff, I see this guy at a chicken shop, and for some reason it sounds good to me, so I walk over and say, hey, and he talks in fluent English, and I'm shocked because he's the first person, I think, who speaks English that well. I find out that they don't teach English in every school in Ulaanbaatar. It's not super common. So people don't learn English growing up in Mongolia, apparently, by default. Some do. So another person told me that all schools teach English, but that was the only person that told me that. Another 10 people told me that they don't teach English in schools. So I think that person maybe just wanted me to think better of the country, but I don't judge anyone for not teaching English in their schools. Anyway, this guy, great English. Oh my God, I should have freaking interviewed him. What is wrong with me? Okay, maybe I'll do that. That's so funny. I've gone back a few times and their chicken shop is closed down right now. Okay, I meet this kid. Kid is cool. His name is Boynan. He has 3 scholarships. He's college age. He's going to go to university soon. He can go to China, South Korea, or Japan. And I was like, man, if you go to China, it's going to be the best food in the world. And then he was like, yeah, but I'm really sensitive to smells. And I was like, then you probably don't want to go to China because of those 3 countries, China's smells are the strongest. And he's like, especially body odor. And I was like, ooh, that's another red flag because if you're on one of those subways, you're going to run into a couple people with body odor. And he told me he used to work at a Mongolian restaurant here, and he could smell Chinese people when they went into his restaurant. And if you're a U.S. person, you're like, what? That's racist. That's how people talk in other countries. There's no veneer of civility or non-bigotry in most other countries in the world, including Europe. In most countries, you don't get the cultural attitude that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So that's a very common thing to hear from any country. Chinese people say similar things about Japanese people. Japanese people say it about Koreans. Everybody has their opinion. Well, Japanese people, because they're so polite. But, oh, actually, you know what? No, I know a Japanese guy, and he definitely complained about Chinese people the whole time, just how dirty everything in China was. So you will get, that's very common. That's just blunt like thing. And that's what he told me. And I was like, well, I have friends there and they're not all smelly. He's like, yeah, but usually they're so smelly. I was like, okay. And then I talked about South Korea and I was like, it sounds like you want South Korea. Japan's a little uptight. They're not super happy all the time because they have to work so much and they're very detail oriented. So if you just want a fun, like the best experience, probably South Korea. And he likes Korean. He's interested in the language. He likes the music and it seems the dramas, it seems like that's where he's leaning anyway, but he's still going to go on a trip. Very brave. He's going to go to Beijing and check out China, which he's going to hate because the air smells bad in Beijing. And then he's going to go to South Korea and then he's going to go to Japan and then bounce back to Mongolia after, make his decision. I'm betting it's going to be South Korea. But he was a nice guy to talk to and it was really interesting. We talked for a while, maybe 25 minutes, and I ordered soy. Oh, there's so many Korean restaurants, and there's so much Korean chicken here. So I ordered some Korean fried chicken from him, soy garlic, but it's still really sweet. But it was good, and he cooked it good. And we talked about recipes for good Korean chicken. And I was like, I don't know, but you got to fry it twice. And he's like, it's not my restaurant. They won't let me. All right, so I'm talking with Study Boy, and then I get the chicken. Oh, I told him that I wasn't going to eat chicken because I usually don't eat that early in the day. And then I walked by the beer section and there was like 50 beers to choose from. And I was like, well, and I grabbed a beer and went back and I was like, hey, I got to try this beer. So I'm going to need some fried chicken with that. And he was like, great. And fried me up some soy garlic fried chicken. I said, bon voyage to the fella. Oh, they cook it fresh too, relatively, it's a fast food thing. But he cooked it right there. So it took 10 minutes, but then got my beer. Got my chicken, said goodbye to Study Boy, and went out the door, checked out, and I just sat down outside on a bench and ate. And within a minute, a homeless dude walked up and started speaking Mongolian. And I was like, sorry. And he said, where are you from? And he said a couple things in very broken English. And then, without caring what my answer was, he just pointed to the beer I was drinking. And I was like, yep, it's good. I like it so far. And then he pointed at it again and then pointed at himself aggressively. And it clearly could only mean, give me that beer. And I said, nope, I'm drinking this. And then he nodded. He said, okay. And then he just sat next to me while I ate my chicken and drank my beer. And when there was like, I don't know, a few centimeters of beer at the bottom, I gave him the beer and he seemed very happy and he drank it right away. I hear alcoholism is a problem here, so I decided not to drink outside after that because that was fast. I saw him crossing the street and I could tell he was already beelining toward me, and then he did. He came right across the street, over the sidewalk, into the store area, on the bench sat and was like, beer, I want beer. So alcohol is probably, and they like vodka here a lot too. I don't want to drink vodka. I just want to chill. I just want to chill and have some chicken and beer. But I was also thinking, like, this guy's life probably, it doesn't look like it's great. He's not going to not drink beer because I don't give him the last of my beer that I don't want anyway. Just give him the beer. So I gave him the rest of my beer. And he seemed very happy for it. I think he said thank you, or maybe he said buy or something. Or maybe he just drank it. I can't remember. It's my first day in Ulaanbaatar. I'm going to walk around, see. The first thing I do in any new city is walk all around and find all the little alleys and figure out all the cool stuff to check out. And I was already having an interesting day. And did I get my phone the first day? Let me check. You know what? I might have, and I didn't write that down. That was interesting because I walked into, there's a couple main places here. There's Mobicom, which is the one I eventually got, and then the bigger one that I tried to go to, I can't remember, Unitel maybe? And I went in there and there was 50 people. It was just packed. And I was like, nope, I'll just walk to outside of the city and find a tiny shop instead. And then I walked outside and literally next door up a flight of stairs was Mobicom. And I was like, oh, might as well check. And I walk in there and there's 3 people, 3 customers. It's the newer telecommunications network, so maybe people like the Unitel one, and that's why. But I walked in and this girl saw me walk in and then looked back down at her computer, just like, I don't want to talk to anybody, just shut up and leave. And I found out later, that's just how people kind of are here. They're an aggressive, insular people. They're very nice if you talk to them, and they're very cool, but it's just like, they don't like work. Nobody likes work. And they're independent and badass, so they're like, I don't have to like work either. Like in Japan, they don't like to work, but it's like, it's a thing. It's part of their culture. Mongolian people are like, yeah, I'll work if I want to. Get off my back. Which rings real true for this guy. So I saw her do that, but I needed a SIM card. So I walked over and I said, hey, in my stupid tourist voice. And she looked up and literally rolled her eyes, sighed very quickly, roll eyes, hello. And I was like, hey, just looking for a SIM card. And she was like, we have SIM cards. It's like, great, thank you. Which ones can I get? And she like begrudgingly pulled out a full, or she like tapped on the computer and then turned the screen toward me. And she's like, we have this and this and this. How long are you here? And I was like, 1 month. She's like, oh, that's cool. So you're visiting. And she like warmed up a little bit and we had a nice little exchange of a few sentences. And then as soon as I chose a plan, I was like, that one. She's like, oh, okay. And she got like, she must hate doing the actual job. It was okay when we talked a little bit. Like I got a couple smiles, but mostly she just looked like she wanted to put a gun to her head every time she had to tap into her telecom system, which maybe the job sucked. I don't know. Or maybe that's why there's only 3 people, 3 customers in that shop, because she was like, just leave me alone. Boy, did she have that. She looked very professional. She clean, like straight back hair, a nice blazer. She was super professional looking, but she rolled her eyes a second time and sighed. I can't even remember what it was for now. It might have just been like, do you want your receipt? No. Okay, whatever, fine. But she rolled her eyes and sighed again. And it was just super funny because when she was talking to me and we were like, we were one-on-one facing each other, she seemed engaged, but as soon as she would turn back to her computer, she'd be like, her whole face would scream, drop a piano on my head, please. It was pretty fun to be part of that interaction, I'll tell you. I just like watching stuff. I like observing people and learning things. And I was just fascinated by this girl. Just like, what is going on with her? Maybe she's having a really bad day. And the small talk we talked was like, oh, at least that's nice. I don't have to think about. And then as soon as we stopped talking, face just fell back into the well of despair that her computer was apparently showing her. It looked like it was just showing phone plans to me, but I don't know. I don't work there. Okay, and then I find out it's, what was it, $7 for $6? It was $6, I think, for 1 month, 25 gigabytes. The thing I'm actually remembering is $250, but that seems insane. It might be. I've been in countries that's only $250 for a month. But it was either 2 or 6, because it was either 8,000 tugrik or 20,000 tugrik. But it was cheap. I think it was 20,000 maybe. It was cheap as heck for $6, 1 month, 25 gigabytes of data. And I don't use a ton of data. I have offline maps that I use most of the time. And so she even installed the app for me on my phone after giving me the SIM card. And it tells me exactly how much I've used. After 2 weeks, I used 1 gigabyte. Like, I really don't use a lot of data while I'm walking around. I'm just listening to locally stored podcasts or music locally stored, or I have an offline map. So text messages really is what I'm using, unless I have to look up, like, what year did Pitch Black come out? In case I need some Vin Diesel trivia, which that comes up a lot. I like movies. Pitch Black, what a good movie. That's Radha Mitchell, right? I just saw Silent Hill again. Radha Mitchell is so good. She's Australian. What was I talking about? Okay, so I got my SIM card. I'm very happy. It looks perfect, and it has been working perfectly this entire time. It was a very painless process, and it didn't take long. Yeah, it was great. So then I'm like, all right, let's keep walking. I just successfully got my SIM card with very little trouble. So I looked around for a snack to celebrate, and I got a beer, and I got some Korean seaweed. And I'm only 2 blocks away from my apartment, and I've probably seen 20 Korean restaurants and the same amount of Korean markets. It's insane. It's all Korean markets and restaurants in Ulaanbaatar, the main city of Mongolia. If you don't know, by the way, this is interesting. Mongolia has 3 million people, roughly, as its entire population. 1.5 million, half of the entire country, lives in Ulaanbaatar, in the main city. And then across the entire rest of the country, which is quite large, is the other 1.5 million people, totally spread out. Some of them are still nomads. I've met people in Mongolia whose relatives are still nomads and shepherds, and it's fascinating to me. So I want some seaweed, some crispy seaweed, some nori, which is my favorite snack. I go into a store, and they don't have it. Not ringing. It doesn't look great. So I just go to the next one and the next one, and then I go in one. I was like, that looks perfect. That's what I want. Some good crispy sheets of seaweed, and I get that. And then they have a beer that I think I might have just got Cass, actually, that really crappy regular Korean beer. And I go outside and I walk around and look for another place to sit down. And I'm thinking that bum wanted me earlier, so I find a more out of the way spot. And it's outside this little school, but it's not like I'm not drinking in front of a bunch of kids. And I don't even know if school was okay. There was a couple kids with parents that walked in there, but I wasn't in front of the door drinking beer right there. I was like around the corner, sitting on a little wall. And I was sitting there for, 10 minutes, and I see this guy walk past me. And he looks dressed up like a businessman. And he sees me and like locks eyes with me briefly and then just keeps walking. And then he sits down at a bench maybe 50 feet away, but he has a line of sight on me. And I see him just looking at me. But I've been to 30 countries. People look at tourists. They're just like, what the heck is this not my countrymen doing here? And it's often just naked curiosity. And I didn't sense a lot of animosity, but already I got the sense that Mongolian people are more aggressive than most other countries. So his stare was a little aggressive, but I was like, it doesn't look violent aggressive. It just looks Mongolian aggressive, which is just a naked interest in whatever you're interested in. You can have that focus in Mongolia, which I don't love, but it's fine. Every country is different. There's things in every country, and it's really interesting to be in a country this aggressive. And I'll say it's not the exact same between men and women, but the women here are also fiercely independent and fairly aggressive in terms of fiercely independent, I'll say. Aggressive personalities for sure. Very, very certain in themselves. Okay, but I have a bunch of seaweed snacks that I love. I have a bag. I had a bag of kimchi, and I got lucky, I'll say, because I've tried several kimchi since that first one that was so good. That's the only good one. I don't like a lot of the other ones. They all were too spicy, which kimchi isn't supposed to be, and not very complex flavors. But this first one I got, Jeongga, was great and delicious. So I ate kimchi, I ate my seaweed, and I drank beer. I'm just having a ball. And then after I finish everything, I stand up, I look over, and that guy 50 yards away on the bench is still looking at me, and he's not eating anything. He just looks really aggressively curious. And I have to walk by him to get to the main road. I don't have to. I just walk that way because I came from the other way. And as I walk by him, he goes, "You shouldn't eat that." In English, not perfect English, but I can understand him. And I say, "Sorry, what do you mean?" And he says, "You shouldn't eat that food. It's bad food." And I was like, "Kimchi or nori?" He's like, "Yeah, it's Korean. It's bad." I was like, "Why is it bad? It's vegetables." And he said, "Yeah, but you're in Mongolia. You should eat Mongolian food." And I was like, "Well, what are you eating?" He was like, "I'm not eating." Okay. And he's saying this very obviously, like aggressively and confrontationally, but he's not, it certainly didn't, he's a businessman. He didn't look like he was starting a fight. He just looked like, if you're visiting Mongolia, you should eat Mongolian food. And he just wanted to say that, and he had to get that out. So I was like, okay, well, what Mongolian food should I try? And he looked surprised that I was engaging with him. It seemed, I kind of got the impression that he thought I was going to like just blow him off and go walk away and not listen to what he had to say. And he had to think for a while. And then he was like, boots, very good Mongolian food. It's wrapped in bread. There's meat inside. Boots, you can eat boots. Very Mongolian. I was like, okay. He's like, Korean food, it's not healthy. And I was like, no, it is healthy. It's like vegetables. It's pretty healthy. And he's like, yeah, I like Mongolian food better. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go. And then he stood up and he was like, I'll walk with you. I'm an architect. And I was like, oh, okay. That's a great job. Do you like it? I can't remember. And we had small talk about how he was an architect. And in his building, there was like a whole city plan of all of Ulaanbaatar or something, which actually I've seen now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe that was his building. And yeah, he was very excited. Once I asked him about the architecture, he kind of became more civil in terms of less aggressive. He just was more excited about talking. And so we talked and it was fine, but he was a weirdo. So I was like, okay, thanks. And he's like, I'm going this way. And I was going to go that way, but I decided, whoa, okay, my house is over there. I'm going to go the other way. And then he went back to his architect's job and shouted at people for eating kimchi. And I was totally happy, a little bit buzzed, walking down the street, and I saw the IQ Museum, which I was very excited to go to. The IQ Museum, or the Intellectual Museum, actually has like a long name. A lot of the English translated names here are weird to Western ears. I'm very curious how that happens. I wish I could have studied Mongolian so I could understand what's up with all these linguistic quirks of the language. But there's no resources. If you have a resource for learning Mongolian, and by that I mean an app that I can self-direct learn the language, I will, even after I leave. Yeah, so there are plenty. I got boots. It was fine. It was not great. It was okay. The meat was very tough, so maybe I just went to a bad boots place. But I tried it a few times, and it was just always the meat was very stringy and tough, which is weird for yak meat. Like I said, it's delicious and soft and amazing. But anyway, I'm glad I tried it because I hadn't tried any Mongolian foods yet, so I'm glad I did get to try it. And nobody speaks English. I mean, it's very rare. That architect and then the, who's the first person? Actually, the first person was the ticket lady. Anyway, it's rare in Ulaanbaatar. So it was always interesting when I came across someone, but mostly I would just hand them my credit card and they would speak in Mongolian and I would try to just say yes and bayarishlar and just thank you and just try and get through the interaction. And mostly that works fine. I walked to Sukbatar Square back during the day because I arrived at midnight, and it's actually an extremely impressive city square. Like if you go to Tiananmen, you're not going to be impressed. It's a big square of concrete, and you can't really see too much from it. It's just a large collection of paving stones. It's pretty boring. But if you go to Ulaanbaatar, Sukbatar Square, there's the massive government palace. There's a giant 5-meter statue of Genghis Khan sitting on a throne, cast in bronze, just staring down at you from his throne. There's another amazing horse statue. There's the National Dramatic Theater for Arts, or whatever it's called, National Drama Theater. All these very impressive looking buildings around the square that I thought were very fun to walk around and see and take pictures of, and especially with the sun setting, the sunsets here are really, really beautiful. The sun is very strong and very yellow, and the skies are often blue with very nice clouds in them. So every single like sunset magic hour picture I take here are stunning, just like Japan, actually. Very, very stunning pictures here. So I enjoyed Sukbatar Square, and I even though it's very aggressive, I do like a lot about Mongolia. It seems very practical, again, which I like about China. They're just going about their lives as they understand it in their country, and I don't think there's a lot of religion here. And nomads are very normal here, so that's nice because I've been traveling for 15 years. So just to know that if I told someone, oh yeah, I've been traveling for 14 years, they'd be like, yeah, that's what you should do. This is the most nomad country there is. It makes perfect sense to them. And well, I'll get more into that later, I guess. I went to a Japanese restaurant called Haku, and it was pretty good. I got some karage, and I got a lemon, what are they called? The lemon sour? Yeah, the Japanese lemon sour. I went into some Mongolian restaurants, but the menus they had like 8 dishes, no matter what Mongolian restaurant I went into, and none of them looked amazing, and half of the dishes were Korean or Japanese anyway. So it was tricky to find like just traditional Mongolian fare, and I know they're around, but later on when I did go to those places, it was still boots and kushur, which I love actually, and noodles, and then fried rice. There wasn't a lot of distinctive Mongolian cuisine, and I think that's because they're nomads. They've been nomads forever. They still are, a bunch of them. And if you're nomading, you don't have as much time to come up with fancy cuisine, especially when it gets below 0 6 months out of the year. So not a super varied cuisine, looks like. But the stuff they have is good, which I'll get into a little bit later. I went to Haku, that Japanese restaurant, lemon sour, karage, and French fries. Something else, can't remember, whatever. It was a pretty good restaurant. I decided to go back. I did a couple times, but I found other better restaurants that I started frequenting instead. The day after I got the punch card for Haku, actually. Ooh, you know what I was really excited about? I went to all the supermarkets looking at all the fun snacks they have, and then I realized they had spicy chili oil enoki mushrooms, which are one of my favorite snacks, and I get them whenever I can. And they all taste a little bit different, so you have to find which brand uses the real chili oil, or at least the better tasting chili oil. And in Mongolia, it's Yoodger, Yoodger, is probably the best one. There's another good one, but I don't even know what it was because I think it was written in Mongolian. But they have a bunch of different types of enoki mushrooms marinated in spicy chili oil, which is, yeah, like I said, one of my favorite snacks, delicious. So I got a bunch, and I ate a whole bunch that day, and I still have my bottle bidet with me, so it was totally fine after they passed through my system. And I walked down to the national park I had heard about probably a few days later of that first week, probably closer to the end of the first week. I started branching out. I kept walking around every day because it was an interesting city. It's not a flashy city, but it's definitely an interesting city, and there are things happening. There's a jazz club here, and there are concerts there. There's IMAX theaters. There's stuff going on. So I went down to the national park and walked around it. I thought I walked all around it. I walked around like 10% of it. It's a huge park. It's, I don't even know, 20 city blocks, 40? It's giant. They have a lot of space in this country, so I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, but I was pretty surprised. No, there's no way it's 40. I don't even think it's 20 city blocks, but it's large, and they have big blocks in this country. Everything's pretty big here. The people are bigger. The people are big Asians, and all the boys are handsome, cool motorcycle dudes, and all the chicks are tough ladies. So they're just cool. They're all wearing leather jackets. They got cool hair, but not like delicate South Korean hair. It's just gelled, or it's just like shaved. And a lot of them are curly haired, and some of them have brown hair. And there's an urban legend, or at least a purported historical fact, that Genghis Khan had red hair, and some say blue eyes. And since there's no picture, there's no, nobody really knows for sure. But a couple people brought that up while I was here, so I was surprised they all know that, but I guess they must, because Genghis Khan his presence is everywhere in this city, and probably around the whole country. There's a 50-meter horse statue with him on it that I didn't go to because all the locals were like, it's a big horse, don't worry about it. And I've seen big horse statues. I bet it would be cool, but I'm just too lazy to get out there. It's pretty far outside the city, and I've been finding so many interesting things I like to do and explore around the city that I just haven't made it there yet. Okay, this was interesting. Oh yeah, wait, there's a couple things. I was at the roller rink, 90s rap roller rink, and so they were playing like the Rough Riders anthem and all sorts of 90s rap and pop R&B songs, all the hits of 90s US rap. And what was great was that it was all in Mongolian. They weren't playing the actual songs, they were playing Mongolian cover versions of those songs. So yeah, there was the Rough Riders anthem in Mongolian, and Helicopter in Mongolian, and just all these super recognizable tunes, but in Mongolian, which is a cool, guttural, aggressive sounding language. Okay, there were a bunch of Mongolian girls I noticed, and women, who had stars on their heads, and I was very confused, and I thought it was just like a cute design. It looked cute, like little stars on their faces, one or two. I was very confused, though. I couldn't figure it out why they would do that, except as a cool decoration or a holiday, like Ash Wednesday, maybe put something on your forehead. But some of the stickers were in different places, and there was different numbers of stickers or tattoos. I couldn't even tell at first, and my host didn't know, and I asked people. They didn't know, but I finally asked someone, and she told me that they're anti-pimple stickers. They're like pimple medicated pads, and you can get them in different shapes, but the star's the most popular. And you know what? Good. It looks good. Like, I don't think they probably don't actually need to use it, but it does look kind of cute that there's all these ladies and girls walking around with stars on their faces. Little David Bowie action. I mean, they're not giant stars like he had, but they're just little star stickers on the face, and it looks cool. Everything looks cool here. Everything the people do looks pretty cool here. They're very fashionable people. And I'm wondering if any of that fashion is influenced from Russia, but I've watched a lot of videos of Russian stuff. They don't seem super fashionable to me. Are regular Russian people generally quite fashionable, like in terms of clothing? Because Mongolians are. Like, everybody dresses well in a rough rider way, in a non-delicate South Korean way, but they're clearly taking care of their appearance like a South Korean would, and they take care of their hairstyle. It just doesn't look delicate. They're a broader, sturdier people in general, and they wear, like I said, leather motorcycle jackets, and even if they're not cyclists, even if they're not motorcycle people, they're wearing badass like spikes and boots and stuff. They're cool. These people are cool. You should come here if you want to see cool people. The Mongolian boys, there's a lot of electric bikes here, like a lot of electric motorcycles, and a whole bunch of the kids have them. Like, I mean, kid from 9 up to 15, like these pretty young people, and doing wheelies down the road, like in traffic, a lot, every day. Every hour I walk around, I'm seeing 1 or 2 kids pop a wheelie on their bike, and sometimes it'll be like 10 an hour. It's very common. I haven't seen a single day where I haven't seen someone doing a wheelie when I've been walking outside. Okay, and the next up is the IQ Museum, the Intellectual Museum, which is a very interesting puzzle museum, but I will talk about that next week. So thank you so much for listening. It's been fascinating being in Mongolia. I'll tell you more Mongolian stories in the next installment next week. Have a great rest of your day. You can talk to me at bitofarambler@gmail.com, bitofarambler on Blue Sky, bitofarambler on Lemmy, and I will talk to you soon.